The stagecoach wheels hit a rut so deep that Eleanor Katherine's head nearly struck the ceiling, and when she finally stumbled onto the dusty main street of Austin, Texas, in the scorching June heat of 1877, she had exactly $17 to her name and nowhere to sleep that night. The advertisement she clutched in her gloved hand promised a room for rent above a mercantile, affordable and respectable, which were the two words that mattered most to a 23-year-old woman traveling alone after her father's death had left her with nothing but debts in Missouri. Austin sprawled before her with its wide dirt streets and wooden buildings, the state capitol construction visible in the distance, a promise of civilization in what still felt like the edge of the frontier. The air smelled of horses, dust, and something cooking that made her empty stomach clench with hunger. She found the mercantile easily enough. The sign read Colton General Store in fresh paint, and through the wide front windows she could see shelves stocked with everything from fabric to farm equipment. The building itself was 2 stories, sturdy pine construction with a covered porch that provided blessed shade. Eleanor smoothed her dark traveling dress, tucked a strand of auburn hair back into place, and pushed through the door. A bell chimed above her head, and the man behind the counter looked up from his ledger. Eleanor's breath caught despite herself. He was tall, probably in his late 20s, with sun-darkened skin that spoke of more time outdoors than behind a counter. His dark hair needed cutting, and his eyes were an unusual shade of amber brown that seemed to assess her in a single glance. He wore simple clothes, a cotton shirt with the sleeves rolled up revealing muscular forearms, and there was something about the way he carried himself that suggested he was more than just a shopkeeper. "Help you, miss?" His voice was deeper than she expected, with a slight drawl that marked him as a Texan. "I am here about the room." Eleanor stepped forward, keeping her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "The advertisement said to inquire here. Is it still available?" Something flickered across his face, an expression she could not quite read. He set down his pen and came around the counter, and she realized he was even taller than she had first thought, easily over 6 feet. "You came all this way just for the room?" "I came all this way to start over," she said honestly, because she was too tired for anything but the truth. "Austin needs teachers, according to the territorial notices. I have my certificates. But first, I need somewhere to live that I can afford on a teacher's salary." He studied her for a long moment, and Eleanor forced herself not to fidget under that steady gaze. She had learned not to show weakness, especially not to men who might take advantage. But there was something in his expression that was not predatory, more considering, almost concerned. "Zachary Colton," he said finally, extending his hand. "Most folks call me Zach, and I am afraid I need to be honest with you about that room." Eleanor's heart sank as she shook his hand, his grip warm and calloused. "It is already rented." "No." He released her hand and gestured around the store. "I own this place, but I do not live here. I have a ranch about 5 miles outside town. The room upstairs, well, I had it fixed up thinking I might rent it out, but the truth is it is not really suitable for a young woman alone. There is no separate entrance, you would have to come through the store, and I close up at night, so if you needed to get in or out after hours, you would be out of luck." The disappointment must have shown on her face because he quickly continued. "But I might have another option, if you are willing to hear it." Eleanor waited, trying not to let hope show too plainly. $17 would get her a week at a boarding house if she was lucky, and she needed to save every penny until she could secure a teaching position. "My ranch house is bigger than I need," Zach said, speaking carefully as if weighing each word. "My sister lived with me until she got married last year, moved to San Antonio with her husband. Her room has been sitting empty. It has got a door that latches, good privacy. You would have the run of the kitchen, and there is a pump inside so you would not have to haul water. In exchange for the room and board, you could help with some of the household tasks. Cooking, that sort of thing. I can manage, but I am no good at it, and I spend most of my time with the cattle anyway. It was improper, incredibly improper, and they both knew it. An unmarried woman living in a bachelor's home was the sort of thing that ruined reputations. But Eleanor thought of her $17 and the long, uncertain road to finding proper lodging and employment, and she knew she could not afford propriety right now. "Why would you offer this to a complete stranger?" she asked bluntly. "You know nothing about me." Zach leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "You are right, but I know desperation when I see it, and I know what it is like to be new in a hard place with no help. When I came to Austin 10 years ago, I had even less than you probably do. An old rancher named Tom Henderson gave me work when no one else would, taught me everything about cattle and horses, and when he passed, he left me his ranch. Said I had earned it. I figure maybe it is my turn to give someone else a chance." There was something in his voice when he spoke of Tom Henderson, a grief that was old but still genuine, and Eleanor felt some of her wariness ease. "And you are certain this is all you want? Room and board in exchange for cooking and housework? Nothing else?" she had to ask. She had heard too many stories of young women who trusted the wrong men and paid terrible prices. Zach's expression darkened, but not with anger at her, she realized. Anger at the implication, at the men who made such questions necessary. "Nothing else. You would have your privacy and your safety, and I give you my word on that. If you want, we can draw up a proper contract, have it witnessed in town. And if you are uncomfortable at any point, you can leave. I will even help you find other lodging." Eleanor looked around the well-stocked store, at the quality of the goods and the careful organization. She looked at Zachary Colton with his honest eyes and work-hardened hands, and she made a choice that she hoped was not foolish. "I would like to see the ranch," she said. "And then I will decide." Relief crossed his face so plainly that Eleanor almost smiled. "Fair enough. I've got a wagon out back. Give me 10 minutes to close up the store and we can head out." As he moved around the shop, pulling down shades and locking the cash box, Eleanor wandered the aisles. Everything was neat and well maintained, prices clearly marked and fair from what she could tell. There were quality goods alongside practical staples, and she noticed a small shelf of books, an unexpected luxury in a frontier store. "You read?" she asked, touching the spine of a copy of Dickens. "When I have time," Zach answered from where he was checking the back door, "which is not often enough. My sister Sarah was the real reader. She must have gone through every book in here twice before she left. You miss her." It was not a question, and Zach paused in his work to look at her. "Every day. She helped me build this place up, managed the store while I worked the ranch. Now I am trying to do both and not doing either as well as I should." "Is that why you want a tenant?" Eleanor asked. "Someone to help with the household while you focus on the work?" "Partly," he admitted. "But also because that house is too quiet now. I grew up in a big family, lots of noise and chaos. The silence gets to me sometimes." There was a loneliness in his voice that Eleanor understood too well. Her father's house had been quiet too after her mother died, and after he followed her 6 months ago, the silence had been unbearable. The wagon was sturdy and well-maintained like everything else Zach seemed to own, pulled by 2 horses that clearly knew their master. He helped Eleanor up onto the seat, his hand steady on her elbow, and then they were rolling out of Austin proper onto the open road. The landscape was beautiful in a stark way. Rolling hills covered in grass and wildflowers, clusters of oak trees providing occasional shade. The heat was intense, but the movement of the wagon created a breeze, and Eleanor found herself relaxing for the first time in weeks. Zach drove with easy competence, pointing out landmarks as they went. "That is the Peterson place," he said, nodding toward a distant house. "Good people, they have got 5 kids. The eldest boy helps me out sometimes during roundup, and over that rise is the creek. It does not run strong this time of year, but there is always water, good for the cattle." "How big is your ranch?" Eleanor asked. "About 1,500 acres. Not the biggest spread in the territory, but it is mine free and clear. I run about 200 head of cattle, mostly longhorns, some crossbreeds. It is a decent living, getting better every year." He spoke with quiet pride, and Eleanor could understand why. In this country, land and livestock meant security, independence. It must have taken tremendous work to build this from nothing. The ranch house came into view as they crested a hill, and Eleanor sat up straighter. It was larger than she expected, a solid 2-story structure with a wide porch that wrapped around 2 sides. There was a barn nearby, a corral with several horses, and other outbuildings that looked well maintained. Trees had been planted around the house, still young but providing some shade, and there was even the start of a garden plot, though it looked neglected. "Sarah started that garden," Zach said, following her gaze. "I've tried to keep it up, but I am better with cattle than plants." He pulled the wagon up to the house and helped Eleanor down. Up close, the house was even more impressive, built from solid timber with glass windows and a real shingled roof. This was not a rough frontier cabin, but a proper home, built to last. Inside was even better. The main room was spacious, with a stone fireplace, real furniture including a sofa and chairs and bookshelves along one wall. The kitchen was separated by a half wall and had a cast iron stove, a pump at the sink, and a proper work table. Upstairs were 3 bedrooms, and Zach showed her to the largest of the spare rooms. "This was Sarah's," he said, pushing open the door. "I have washed all the linens, and she left some things in the dresser that might be useful, dresses and such. You are about her size, might be something you can use." The room was perfect. A real bed with a thick mattress, a dresser and wardrobe, a washstand with a basin and pitcher, and a window that looked out over the hills. There was even a small mirror on the wall and a rag rug on the floor. Eleanor had not had a room this nice since before her mother died. "There is a latch on the inside of the door," Zach pointed out, "and my room is on the other side of the house. You would have complete privacy." Eleanor walked to the window, looking out at the vast Texas sky. It was a risk, she knew that, but it was also an opportunity, and she had not gotten this far by playing it safe. "I will need to go back to town tomorrow," she said, turning to face him, "to inquire about the teaching position. And I would like that contract you mentioned, something in writing about the terms of this arrangement." Zach's face broke into a genuine smile, and Eleanor was struck by how it transformed him from merely handsome to truly attractive. "Does that mean you are saying yes?" "It means I am willing to try," Eleanor said carefully. "For a month, perhaps, see how it works for both of us. That is more than fair." Zach moved toward the door, then paused. "I should warn you, I am used to living alone now. I might not be the best company, and I tend to work long hours. But I promise to be respectful, and if you need anything, anything at all, you just say the word." "I appreciate that," Eleanor said. "And I should warn you that I have very strong opinions about how a kitchen should be organized, and I will probably rearrange everything." He laughed, a deep, genuine sound that made Eleanor smile in return. "The kitchen is yours. I will stay out of your way." They had dinner that evening, a simple meal of beans and cornbread that Zach had prepared before going into town. He was right that he was not much of a cook, but Eleanor had eaten worse. They sat at the kitchen table, and he asked about her journey, about her father and what had brought her to Texas. Eleanor found herself telling him more than she intended. About her father's print shop in Missouri, how he had taken ill and the debts had piled up, how she had sold everything just to cover what he owed. About her mother, who had died when Eleanor was 16, and how she had kept her father's business running for years until his death had finally ended that chapter of her life. "I am sorry," Zach said quietly. "Losing family is hard. Losing everything else on top of it, that is harder." "What about your family?" Eleanor asked. "You mentioned growing up in a big household." Zach's expression grew distant. "My parents had a farm in Tennessee. 6 kids, I was the middle one. After the war, things got hard, really hard. I left when I was 18 to find work, send money back. But by the time I had anything worth sending, they had lost the farm. Family scattered. Sarah came out here to join me when she was 20, and we have tried to track down the others, but people disappear out here. Last I heard, my oldest brother was in California, but that was years ago. The war. He would have been a child during it, probably, but old enough to remember." Eleanor did not ask which side because it did not matter anymore. The war had been over for more than a decade, but its scars remained, especially in the South and borderlands. They cleaned up together, an easy domesticity that surprised Eleanor. Zach was neat, methodical, putting things away carefully. When she mentioned wanting to write a letter to a friend back in Missouri, he showed her to the small desk in the main room, providing paper and ink without hesitation. "I will be up early," he said as they headed upstairs. "I have to check the herd and a couple of the horses need attention, but help yourself to anything in the kitchen for breakfast. And if you want to go into town, the wagon is yours to use. The horses know the way." Eleanor nodded, suddenly exhausted. It had been such a long day, so many uncertainties, and now she was standing in a strange house with a man she had met only hours ago. But as she entered her room and slid the latch home, she felt something she had not felt in months: safe. For the first time in so long, she felt safe. She slept deeply that night, and when she woke to the sound of a rooster crowing, the sun was already well up. Eleanor dressed quickly in one of her 2 decent dresses and went downstairs to find Zach already gone. A note on the table saying he would be back by noon and to make herself at home. The kitchen was indeed a disaster by her standards, with supplies scattered across multiple shelves in no logical order. Eleanor spent the morning reorganizing, grouping like items together, cleaning as she went. She found flour and starter and set about making proper bread, then discovered the sad state of the pantry and made a list of what they needed. When Zach returned, dusty and tired, the house smelled of fresh bread and the kitchen was transformed. He stopped in the doorway, staring. "Is that bread I smell fresh this morning?" Eleanor said, wiping her hands on a borrowed apron she had found in Sarah's room. "And I have made a list of supplies we need. The pantry is barely stocked, and if you expect me to cook proper meals, I will need ingredients to work with." Zach was still staring at the kitchen, at the organized shelves and clean counters, and Eleanor felt a flicker of worry that she had overstepped. But when he looked at her, his expression was almost awed. "I forgot," he said softly. "I forgot what it was like to have someone care about this place." Sarah was like this, always organizing and improving. After she left, I just let it all slide. "Well, I am here now," Eleanor said, trying to keep her tone brisk to cover the unexpected emotion his words stirred. "And I cannot abide a disorganized kitchen." They went into town that afternoon together, Zach driving the wagon while Eleanor consulted her list. At the mercantile, which Zach had left in the care of a young clerk, they loaded up on supplies. Eleanor was careful to choose economical options, but Zach insisted on quality when it mattered. "Get the good flour," he said. "And if you want fresh vegetables, we should stop at the market. There is a Mexican woman who sells produce near the plaza, best in town." They found the market, and Zach was right about the quality. The woman, who introduced herself as Senora Martinez, had beautiful tomatoes, peppers, onions, and herbs. Eleanor bought generously, already planning meals in her head. "You have a good husband," Senora Martinez said to Eleanor in accented English as she wrapped the vegetables. "He lets you buy what you need." Eleanor opened her mouth to correct her, but Zach smoothly intervened. "She deserves the best. Thank you, Senora." As they walked away, Eleanor hissed, "Why did you not correct her? Now she thinks we are married." "Would you rather I announce to a stranger that you are living in my house unwed?" Zach asked reasonably. "People will make assumptions. We might as well let them make the ones that protect your reputation." He was right, Eleanor knew, but it felt strange. Still, when they stopped at the school board office and she inquired about the teaching position, the clerk's attitude changed noticeably when Zach stood beside her, his presence lending her respectability she would not have had alone. "We do need a teacher," the clerk, a thin man named Horace Pemberton, said. "The last one left to get married, and we have been managing with volunteers, but it is not ideal. Do you have your certificates?" Eleanor produced them, and Pemberton examined them carefully. "These are from Missouri." "Good schools. You have experience. 3 years teaching at the primary level and 2 years before that as an assistant," Eleanor said. "Ages 5 through 12, all subjects." Pemberton nodded slowly. "The position pays $30 a month with summers off. School runs September through May. We would need you to start when term begins in September, which gives you time to prepare. Are you settled in Austin? The board prefers teachers who are established residents." "She is living at my ranch," Zach said before Eleanor could answer. "She will be settled and ready by September." Pemberton's eyebrows rose slightly, but he did not comment. "Very well. I will present your application to the board. We meet next week. Check back then for their decision." As they left the office, Eleanor turned to Zach. "You did not have to vouch for me like that. What if they ask questions?" "Let them ask," Zach said easily. "You are qualified, you need the work, and they need a teacher. Everything else is just small-town gossip, and that will happen no matter what we say." He was probably right, but Eleanor worried about it nonetheless. In a small town like Austin, reputation was everything, especially for a woman, especially for a teacher who would be entrusted with children. They had dinner that evening at a small restaurant, Zach insisting that since Eleanor had done all the cooking preparation, she deserved a night off. The food was decent, beef and potatoes, and Eleanor watched the other diners with interest. This was her town now. These were her neighbors, and she needed to understand the community she was joining. On the ride back to the ranch, the sun setting in brilliant orange and red across the vast Texas sky, Eleanor felt a sense of possibility. It had been only a day, but already her life felt different. She had a place to stay, the prospect of employment, and in Zachary Colton, perhaps the beginning of a friendship. She did not let herself think beyond friendship. That would be dangerous for a dozen reasons. But as she glanced at him, his capable hands steady on the reins, his profile strong against the sunset, she could not help but notice the way her heart beat just a little faster. The next week fell into a rhythm that surprised Eleanor with its ease. She rose early, prepared breakfast for both of them, and Zach would head out to work the ranch while she tackled the house. Years of neglect had left their mark, and Eleanor attacked the work with determination. She cleaned windows, beat rugs, scrubbed floors, and slowly transformed the house into a real home. In the afternoons, she would often cook dinner, experimenting with the new ingredients and trying to create meals that were both economical and satisfying. Zach was an appreciative audience, praising everything she made even when Eleanor knew it was just passable. "You should taste my mother's cooking," she said one evening as he enthusiastically attacked a plate of chicken and dumplings. "She could make anything delicious. I am still learning." "This is the best meal I have had in a year," Zach said firmly. "Sarah was a good cook, but she did not enjoy it the way you seem to. What you are doing, it is not just food. It is care." Eleanor felt heat rise to her cheeks and quickly changed the subject. But his words stayed with her. The idea that what she was doing mattered, that it was more than just fulfilling an obligation. They talked during these dinners, long conversations that ranged from practical matters to deeper subjects. Zach told her about the ranch, about the challenges of managing cattle in the Texas heat, about his hopes to expand and breed better stock. Eleanor shared her thoughts on teaching, her belief that education could transform lives, especially for children who had few other opportunities. "There are children out here who have never been to school," she said one evening. "Farm families who cannot spare their children during planting and harvest. I want to find a way to reach them too, maybe evening classes or weekend sessions." "You could use the church hall," Zach suggested. "Reverend Morrison is always looking for ways to serve the community. I bet he would let you use the space." It was a good idea, and Eleanor added it to her mental list of things to pursue once she secured the teaching position. If she secured it. The school board was meeting that week, and she tried not to let anxiety overwhelm her. Zach seemed to sense her worry. "They would be fools not to hire you," he said. "And the board members might be a lot of things, but they are not fools. They know quality when they see it." His confidence in her was both comforting and unnerving. Eleanor was not used to someone believing in her so completely, especially someone she had known for such a short time. On Friday, they went back into town, and Eleanor presented herself at the school board office. Pemberton greeted her with what might have been a smile. "Miss Katherine, the board has reviewed your application. They were impressed with your credentials and experience. The position is yours if you want it. $30 a month, starting September 1st. School meets Monday through Friday, 8 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. You will have about 20 students, various ages and levels." Relief flooded through Eleanor so strongly that she had to grip the edge of the desk. "Thank you. Yes, I accept. Thank you so much." "We are grateful to have you," Pemberton said. "Austin is growing and we need good teachers. There is one condition, however. The board requests that you maintain a proper reputation, as you will be a role model for the children. Your living situation was discussed." Eleanor's relief turned to ice. "I assure you, my living situation is entirely proper. I am a tenant, nothing more, and my conduct is above reproach." "I am sure it is," Pemberton said, though his tone suggested doubt. "Nevertheless, the board wants to be certain there is no impropriety. If there were any concerns raised by the community, the board would have to reconsider the appointment." It was a threat, thinly veiled, and Eleanor felt anger rise in her chest, but she forced it down, keeping her expression calm. "I understand. Thank you for the opportunity." Outside, Zach was waiting by the wagon, and one look at her face told him something was wrong. "What happened?" "I got the position," Eleanor said, climbing up onto the seat. "But they made it clear that my reputation must be spotless, and they are concerned about me living at your ranch." Zach's jaw tightened. Hypocrites. Half the board members have done worse than provide honest housing to someone in need, but they want to judge you. "It does not matter," Eleanor said, though it did. "I just have to be careful, make sure no one can question my conduct." They rode in silence for a while, and then Zach said, There is one way to solve this completely. Make it so no one can say a thing. Eleanor looked at him, afraid she knew what he was going to suggest. What do you mean, marry me? The words hung in the air between them, and Eleanor felt her heart lurch. That is not funny. I am not joking. Zach pulled the wagon to a stop, turning to face her fully. Think about it, Eleanor. It would solve everything. Your reputation would be secure, you would have a permanent home, and neither of us would have to worry about what people say. That is insane, Eleanor said, but her voice shook. We barely know each other. People do not just get married to avoid gossip. People get married for all kinds of reasons, Zach countered. And we get along well, do we not? You have made my house a home again, and I like to think I have given you security when you needed it. We could build on that. Build on what? Eleanor demanded. Mutual convenience. That is not a foundation for a marriage. It is more than a lot of people have, Zach said quietly. And I will be honest with you. I am lonely, Eleanor. I have been lonely since Sarah left, maybe even before. I need someone to share this life with, to build something with. And I think you might need that too. He was right, and that terrified her. Eleanor did need that, had been aching for connection and purpose and a place to belong. But marriage was supposed to be about love, was it not? About passion and romance, not practical arrangements. I do not love you, she said bluntly. And you do not love me, how could we? It has been barely a week. No, Zach agreed. But I like you. I respect you. And I think, given time, we could build something real. Is that not better than marrying a stranger you might never grow to care for? At least we would have a foundation of friendship. Eleanor stared out at the landscape, her mind racing. He was offering her security, a home, a future. But marriage was permanent, and she would be tying herself to a man she barely knew. What if he changed once they were wed? What if the kindness he showed now was just an act, and behind closed doors he became someone else? But then she thought about Pemberton's veiled threat, about the precariousness of her position, about the years of insecurity she had already endured. And she thought about Zachary Colton, who had shown her nothing but respect and kindness, who worked hard and kept his word, who had given her shelter when she had nowhere else to go. I need time to think about it, she said finally. Of course. Zach picked up the reins again. Take all the time you need. I just wanted you to know the offer was there. They did not speak more about it that day, but the question hung between them, coloring everything. Eleanor went about her work mechanically, her mind spinning through possibilities and consequences. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Zach said quietly, I should tell you something else. If you are even considering this, you deserve to know. Eleanor waited, her stomach tight with apprehension. I was married before, Zach said, his voice low. Years ago, when I first came to Texas. Her name was Caroline. We met in San Antonio, married quick, and it was a disaster. She hated ranch life, hated the isolation, hated everything about Texas. After a year, she left, went back east. I got a letter a couple years later saying she wanted an annulment, that she had married someone else and needed to make it legal. So it was done. I was free again. I am sorry, Eleanor said. That must have been hard. It was, Zach admitted, but mostly because I felt like a fool. I rushed into something without really knowing her, without thinking it through. That is why I am being straight with you now. No illusions, no false promises, just honesty about what this would be. A partnership, Eleanor said slowly. Yes, a partnership equals building a life together. Eleanor considered that. It was not romance, not the sweeping love she had read about in novels, but maybe those stories were fairy tales anyway. Maybe this honest partnership with someone decent was better than waiting for some impossible ideal. If I said yes, she said carefully, what would you expect from me? Beyond the teaching and the housework. Zach was quiet for a moment. I would want a real marriage eventually, not right away, not until you were comfortable. But yes, I would hope for children someday, for a full partnership in every sense. But that would be your choice, Eleanor. I would never force anything. His earnestness convinced her more than any eloquent speech could have. He was laying out terms like a business arrangement, but there was vulnerability in his voice, a hope that touched something deep in Eleanor's heart. "Let me think about it," she said again. "Truly think about it. This is not a decision to make lightly. I know, and whatever you decide, your place here is secure. I am not trying to pressure you." But as the days passed, Eleanor found herself leaning toward yes. She watched Zach work, saw his patience with the animals and his dedication to building something lasting. She noticed the way he listened when she talked, really listened, and how he always asked her opinion on decisions about the house. She saw his loneliness and recognized it because it mirrored her own. She also could not ignore the practical benefits. As his wife, her reputation would be secure, the teaching position safe. She would have a home, security, the chance to put down roots. And if there was no passionate love yet, well, there was also no history of hurt, no baggage weighing them down. They could build something from the ground up together. A week after his proposal, Eleanor found Zach in the barn, working on repairing a saddle. She stood in the doorway, gathering her courage. "I have thought about your offer," she said. Zach looked up, his expression carefully neutral. "And? Yes, I will marry you." The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise, warming and bright. He set down the saddle and crossed to her, stopping just short of touching. "You are sure? You do not have to say yes just because you feel obligated." "I am not," Eleanor said. "I am saying yes because I think we could make this work. Because I want a home and a future, and I believe you are someone I could build that with." "Then we will do it right," Zach said firmly. "Proper wedding, proper announcement. I want everyone to know that you are my wife by choice, that this is real." They were married 3 weeks later at the church in Austin, with half the town in attendance. Reverend Morrison performed the ceremony, and Eleanor wore a dress that had been Sarah's, altered to fit her. Zach wore his best suit, and when he slipped the simple gold band on her finger and promised to honor and cherish her, Eleanor felt a flutter of emotion that might have been hope. The reception was held in the church hall, with food provided by the community. Eleanor met her neighbors properly for the first time, and was welcomed with surprising warmth. She supposed that being Zach's wife legitimized her in their eyes, made her one of them instead of an unknown outsider. "He is a good man," Senora Martinez told her, pressing a wrapped bundle of tamales into her hands. "You will be happy, I think." Eleanor hoped she was right. They rode back to the ranch as husband and wife, and Eleanor felt nerves flutter in her stomach. The house was the same, but everything had changed. She was not a tenant anymore but a wife, and that came with expectations. Zach seemed to sense her anxiety. "Your room is still yours," he said as they entered the house. "Nothing has to change tonight or any night until you are ready." "I meant what I said, Eleanor. This goes at your pace." Relief and something else, something that might have been disappointment, washed through her. "Thank you. I appreciate that." They had dinner, awkward and formal after the warmth of the reception, and then Eleanor retreated to her room. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and wondered what she had done. She was married to a man she barely knew, tied to him for life, and she had no idea if she had made a terrible mistake or the best decision of her life. But in the days that followed, Eleanor began to relax into her new role. Marriage, she discovered, was not so different from what they had been doing, except now there was a permanence to it, a security that allowed her to plan and dream beyond tomorrow. Zach was true to his word, patient and respectful, giving her space while also making it clear she was welcome in every part of his life. He showed her the books for the ranch, explaining his plans for expansion, and asked her opinion on decisions. He taught her to ride properly, patient with her inexperience, and took her on long rides through the property, showing her the land that was now partly hers. Eleanor threw herself into preparing for the school term, organizing her lessons and gathering supplies. Zach helped, building her bookshelves for the schoolhouse and purchasing slates and primers without complaint. He seemed genuinely interested in her work, asking about her teaching methods and plans. "You really care about this," he observed one evening as she labored over lesson plans at the kitchen table. "Education changed my life," Eleanor said. "My mother insisted I be educated, not just in basic skills but in literature and mathematics and history. She said knowledge was the one thing no one could take from you. I want to give that to these children, especially the ones who might not otherwise have the chance." Zach reached over and squeezed her hand, a simple gesture that made Eleanor's heart skip. "They are lucky to have you." Slowly, carefully, they were building something. There were moments when Eleanor would catch Zach watching her with an expression she could not quite read, something warm and wondering. There were times when his hand would brush hers and neither of them would pull away immediately. Small touches, brief glances, the gradual awareness that they were more than just partners sharing a house. Summer deepened, and with it came the hard work of the ranch. Zach was gone for longer hours, managing the herd and preparing for the cattle drive that would happen in early fall. Eleanor kept the house and prepared meals, but she also began helping with other tasks. She learned to care for the chickens they kept, to tend the garden, to help with the endless mending and repair that ranch life demanded. One particularly hot afternoon, she brought water out to where Zach was working on the corral fence. He was shirtless, his skin bronzed and gleaming with sweat, and Eleanor felt a jolt of awareness that was definitely not sisterly. He had a good body, lean and muscular from years of hard work, and watching him move with confident strength made Eleanor feel things she had been carefully not thinking about. "Thank you," Zach said, accepting the water and drinking deeply. "You did not have to come all the way out here." "I wanted to," Eleanor said, and it was true. She had wanted to see him, to be near him, and that realization was both thrilling and terrifying. Zach must have seen something in her expression because his own face changed, softened. "Eleanor, I have been thinking. We have been married almost 2 months now, and I do not want you to think I am not attracted to you because I am. But I also do not want to rush you into anything you are not ready for." Heat flooded Eleanor's cheeks. "I appreciate that. I have been thinking about it too. And—" His voice was gentle, no pressure, just curiosity. "And I think I might be ready," Eleanor said softly. "Not necessarily tonight, but soon. I am your wife, Zach, and I want this to be a real marriage in every way. I just needed time to be sure." "Take all the time you need," Zach said. "I will be here when you are ready." He kissed her then, just a soft brush of lips, but it was their first real kiss and it sent warmth flooding through Eleanor's entire body. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with wanting, but he made no move to push for more. That night, Eleanor knocked on Zach's door. When he opened it, surprise and hope warring on his face, she said simply, "I do not want to sleep alone anymore." Zach drew her inside, and they came together with a tenderness that took Eleanor's breath away. He was gentle and patient, and if there was awkwardness in their first joining, there was also sweetness, a connection that went beyond the physical. Afterwards, lying in his arms in the bed that was now theirs, Eleanor felt something shift inside her chest. This was her husband. This was her home. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of love. The next morning, Eleanor woke wrapped in Zach's arms, his breath warm against her hair. She felt different, claimed in a way that was not possessive but protective, cherished. When Zach woke and smiled at her, soft and intimate, Eleanor felt her heart turn over. "Good morning, wife," he murmured. "Good morning, husband," she replied and kissed him. They fell into new rhythms after that, sharing a bed and building intimacy both physical and emotional. Eleanor found herself falling for Zachary Colton in a way she had not expected. Not the sudden lightning strike of storybook romance, but a steady, growing warmth that seeped into every corner of her life. She loved the way he listened to her, really listened, valuing her thoughts and opinions. She loved his work ethic, the way he took pride in building something lasting. She loved his gentleness with the animals and his generosity with neighbors who needed help. She loved the way he made her coffee exactly how she liked it and remembered small things she mentioned in passing. And Zach seemed to be falling too. He told her so one evening as they sat on the porch, her head on his shoulder, watching the stars emerge. "I did not expect this," he said quietly. "When I asked you to marry me, I hoped we could make it work, build a partnership. But Eleanor, it is more than that now. I love you. I think I have been falling in love with you since the day you reorganized my kitchen and made me proper bread." Eleanor laughed, emotion thick in her throat. "I love you too. It snuck up on me, but it is real, Zach. This is real." He kissed her then, deep and sweet, and Eleanor gave herself over to him, to the life they were building together. School started in September, and Eleanor threw herself into teaching with passion. The schoolhouse was a one-room building with desks for about 30 students, though only 22 showed up the first day. Ages ranged from 5 to 14, skill levels from complete beginners to children who could read and calculate better than some adults. It was chaos at first, trying to manage so many different levels and needs. But Eleanor organized them into groups, setting older students to help younger ones, creating lessons that could be adapted for different skill levels. She was strict but fair, demanding effort but celebrating progress, and slowly the chaos resolved into something that resembled order. The children adored her. Eleanor brought books from home, read to them daily, and made learning feel like an adventure rather than a chore. She noticed which children came to school hungry and made sure there were biscuits or fruit available. She saw which students struggled and stayed late to give them extra help. Zach supported her completely, building her supplies and never complaining when she brought work home. He attended school performances, sitting proudly in the front row, and praised her accomplishments as if they were his own. In October, Zach left for a cattle drive, taking a portion of his herd to market in San Antonio. Eleanor missed him terribly, the house too quiet without his presence. But she also felt a thrill of independence, managing the property and her teaching on her own. When he returned 2 weeks later, tired and dirty but triumphant with payment for the cattle, Eleanor ran out to meet him, throwing herself into his arms. "I missed you," she said against his chest. "I missed you too," Zach said, holding her tight. "This house is not a home without you in it." That night they made love with a new intensity, as if reaffirming their connection, and afterwards Zach held her close and said, "I want to build something with you, Eleanor, not just the ranch but a family. I want children with you, a future. Is that something you want too?" "Yes," Eleanor whispered. "Yes, I want that." Winter came, cold and harsh by Texas standards, and Eleanor discovered she was pregnant. The realization came with a mix of joy and terror. She was going to be a mother, responsible for a tiny life, and she had no idea if she was ready for that. Zach was thrilled, his excitement infectious. He became even more protective, insisting she not overwork herself, building up the fire so she would not be cold, worrying over every little thing. Eleanor found it both endearing and occasionally frustrating. "I am pregnant, not dying," she told him one evening when he tried to stop her from lifting a pot of stew. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time." "Not my woman," Zach said stubbornly. "Not carrying my child. You are precious, Eleanor, both of you. Let me take care of you." How could she argue with that? So Eleanor let him fuss and secretly loved it, loved the evidence of how much he cared. She continued teaching through the winter and into spring, finally stopping in late April when the baby was due. The school board grumbled about her leaving before the term ended, but Zach stood firm, saying his wife's health came first, and there were other women who could fill in for a few weeks. Eleanor loved him even more for that, for putting her first without hesitation. The baby came on a warm May evening, a long, difficult labor that terrified Zach and exhausted Eleanor. But when the midwife finally placed their son in her arms, tiny and red-faced and perfect, Eleanor felt a surge of love so intense it brought tears to her eyes. "We have a son," she whispered to Zach, who was staring at the baby with wonder. "He is perfect," Zach breathed. "You are amazing. You are so strong, Eleanor." They named him Thomas after the rancher who had given Zach his start, and he was the light of their lives. Zach proved to be a devoted father, changing diapers without complaint, walking the floor when Thomas cried at night, marveling over every tiny milestone. Eleanor stayed home from teaching the next year, focused on Thomas and the household, and found she did not miss it as much as she expected. She had discovered a new calling in motherhood, though she knew eventually she would return to the classroom. Life settled into a new rhythm, challenging but fulfilling. They had difficult moments, times when money was tight or illness struck the herd, nights when Thomas would not sleep and they were both exhausted. But they weathered it together, supporting each other, building on the foundation they had established. On their second anniversary, Zach gave Eleanor a gift, a beautiful tooled leather journal. Inside, he had written, "For all the stories we will write together." "I love you," Eleanor said, tears in her eyes. 2 years ago, I never imagined I could be this happy." 2 years ago, I was half alive," Zach replied. "You made me whole, Eleanor. You and Thomas, you are everything." Thomas grew into a bright, curious toddler, and Eleanor returned to teaching part-time, bringing him along when he was small, then leaving him with Senora Martinez when he was older. The school board had tried to replace her, but parent demand brought her back, and Eleanor negotiated better terms, setting boundaries that allowed her to balance teaching and motherhood. Zach's ranch continued to grow, his careful breeding program producing better cattle, his reputation as an honest businessman attracting buyers. He hired help, a couple of ranch hands who lived in the bunkhouse he built, taking some of the burden off himself. The extra income allowed them to expand the house, adding rooms for future children, and updating the kitchen with a new stove Eleanor had admired in a catalog. When Thomas was 3, Eleanor became pregnant again, and this time she felt more prepared, less afraid. Their daughter arrived in the fall of 1882, a tiny girl with Eleanor's auburn hair and Zach's amber eyes. They named her Sarah after Zach's sister, and she was as different from Thomas as night from day, calm where he was energetic, thoughtful where he was impulsive. Zach's sister Sarah came to visit when the baby was born, bringing her husband and 2 children, and the house was full of noise and chaos and love. Sarah pulled Eleanor aside one evening and said, "Thank you for making my brother happy. I worried about him being alone, but you are perfect for him." "He is perfect for me," Eleanor replied. "I was lost when I came here, and Zach gave me a home, a family. I am the grateful one." "You saved each other," Sarah said wisely. "That is how the best marriages work." The children grew, and life continued its steady march forward. Thomas started school, brilliant and eager, while Sarah toddled after her brother, trying to keep up. The ranch prospered and Zach bought more land, expanding their holdings. Eleanor continued teaching, now with a reputation as the best educator in the region, drawing students from miles around. They weathered droughts and diseases, economic downturns and personal losses. Zach's parents passed, one after the other, and though they had been estranged, Zach mourned the loss of what could have been. Eleanor's friend from Missouri visited, staying for a month and marveling at the life Eleanor had built. "You were so scared when you left," her friend said. "So uncertain. But look at you now. You found your place." Eleanor looked around at her home, at her children playing in the yard, at Zach riding in from checking the herd, and felt profound gratitude. "I found more than a place. I found a life." When Thomas was 8 and Sarah 5, Eleanor discovered she was pregnant once more. This pregnancy was harder, her body older and less resilient, but she was determined. Their second son arrived early one morning in spring, a lusty, healthy boy they named Henry. "Our family is complete," Zach said that night, watching Eleanor nurse the baby while Thomas and Sarah slept nearby. "3 beautiful children, a ranch that is thriving, a wife I love more every day. I am the luckiest man in Texas. We built this together," Eleanor reminded him. "Every bit of it we did together." The years passed in a blur of school plays and cattle drives, birthdays and holidays, everyday moments that built into a lifetime. Thomas grew into a serious young man, passionate about ranching like his father, already talking about expanding and modernizing. Sarah was quieter, a voracious reader who spent hours in Eleanor's classroom, even when not a student, absorbing everything. Henry was the wild one, always into mischief, keeping them all on their toes. Eleanor eventually stepped back from teaching, training her replacement and focusing on running the ranch household, which had grown complex with hired help and expanding operations. She started a small library in town, donating books and organizing reading groups. Zach served on the town council, helping guide Austin's growth from rough frontier town to established city. On their 15th anniversary, they took a rare trip alone, leaving the children with Sarah and her husband. They traveled to San Antonio, staying in a fine hotel, and spent days wandering the city, reminiscing about their journey. "You ever regret it?" Zach asked one evening as they walked along the river. "Saying yes to a stranger's proposal, tying yourself to this life." Eleanor stopped, turning to face him. At 41, Zach was still handsome, the years adding character rather than diminishing him. His hair had threads of silver now, lines around his eyes, but to Eleanor he was more attractive than ever. "Not for a single moment," she said firmly. "You gave me everything, Zach. A home, a family, love I never dared dream of. How could I regret the best decision I ever made?" "I am the one who should be grateful," Zach countered. "You took a chance on me, trusted a virtual stranger. You made my house a home and filled my life with purpose." "I love you, Eleanor, more now than even on our wedding day." "I love you too," Eleanor said and kissed him, not caring who might see. They were respectable now, established citizens, and she could kiss her husband in public if she wanted. They returned home to find everything running smoothly, the children having managed fine without them. Thomas was nearly 16 now, already helping manage the ranch operations. Sarah was 12, a beautiful girl with her mother's grace and her father's determination. Henry was 9, energy incarnate and already testing every boundary. "We raised them well," Zach observed one evening, watching Thomas work with a new colt, patient and skilled. "We did," Eleanor agreed. "And they will go on to do even better, build on what we started." More years passed, and the children began forging their own paths. Thomas married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring county, a capable young woman named Mary who fit seamlessly into their family. He took over more of the ranch operations, implementing new techniques and expanding their reach. Eleanor loved watching her son become a man, seeing Zach's best qualities reflected in him. Sarah surprised them by wanting to become a doctor, an unusual choice for a young woman, but Eleanor and Zach supported her completely. They sent her to school in the East, sacrificing and saving to afford it, and burst with pride when she graduated and returned to Austin to open a practice. She was one of the first female doctors in the region, facing prejudice and doubt, but she persisted, earning respect through skill and dedication. Henry chose law, articulate and passionate about justice. He attended university in Austin, living at home while studying, and Eleanor loved their evening debates about cases and precedents, his sharp mind challenging hers. "Our children are remarkable," Zach said one evening when all three were home for a family dinner, the table full of conversation and laughter. "They get it from you," Eleanor said. "From us," Zach corrected. "Everything good in them came from both of us." Thomas and Mary gave them grandchildren, 2 boys and a girl, and Eleanor discovered the joy of being a grandmother. She loved spoiling them, indulging them in ways she had not with her own children, and watching Zach with his grandchildren was a special delight. He was patient and playful, building them toys and telling them stories, utterly devoted. Sarah married later, choosing a fellow doctor she met during her training, and they settled in Austin, opening a shared practice. They had one daughter, a serious child who loved books as much as her mother and grandmother. Henry married a lawyer's daughter and moved to San Antonio to practice law, visiting often and writing long letters. As Eleanor approached her 60th birthday, she looked back on her life with satisfaction. From that desperate young woman who had arrived in Austin with $17 and a desperate hope, she had built something extraordinary. She had a husband who still made her heart flutter, children who made her proud, grandchildren who brought joy. She had contributed to her community, educated generations of children, helped build a town. "You remember the day we met?" Eleanor asked Zach one evening as they sat on the porch, as they had countless times over the decades. "Every detail," Zach replied. "You walked into my store looking exhausted and determined, asking about that room. I took one look at you and something just knew. This is her. This is the one." "You did not," Eleanor laughed. "You barely looked at me." "I looked," Zach insisted. "And I saw strength and intelligence and beauty. I saw someone worth taking a chance on. Best gamble I ever made." "I thought you were impossibly handsome," Eleanor admitted, "and terrifying. I had no idea how to handle you. And now you are impossibly handsome and only occasionally terrifying, and I could not imagine life without you." Zach reached over and took her hand, the gesture as natural as breathing after so many years. 46 years, he marveled. "We have been married 46 years, and I love you more today than ever." 46 years since I came to rent a room above your store," Eleanor said softly, "and you offered me a place in your life instead. Best offer I ever made." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over the land they had built their life on, land that would pass to their children and grandchildren, a legacy of love and hard work and partnership. The ranch stretched out before them, prosperous and well-managed, a testament to decades of dedication. Inside the house, Eleanor could hear their newest grandchild crying, being soothed by his mother. The sound made her smile. Life continued, generations building on what came before, and the love she and Zach had created rippled out into the future. "Thank you," Eleanor said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me that day, for taking a chance, for giving me everything I never knew I needed." "Thank you for saying yes," Zach replied, for trusting me, for building this life with me." He kissed her gently, and Eleanor leaned into him, grateful beyond words for the twist of fate that had brought her to Austin, Texas on that hot day so many years ago. She had come seeking shelter and found a home. She had come seeking survival and found love. She had come seeking a room to rent and found a man who offered her the world instead. And what a world it had been! What a beautiful, full, rich life they had created together. As darkness fell and stars emerged in the vast Texas sky, Eleanor sat with her husband of more than 4 decades, surrounded by the evidence of their love, the family they had built, the life they had crafted from nothing but hope and determination, and a willingness to take a chance on each other. It had been more than enough. It had been everything. Their story had started with a simple transaction, a room for rent, a practical arrangement. But it had become so much more, a love story that spanned decades, a partnership that built a legacy, a marriage that proved sometimes the best loves are the ones that grow slowly, carefully, built on friendship and respect and daily choices to show up for each other. Years later, when Eleanor was 70 and Zach 74, they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary with a grand party. All their children and grandchildren gathered, along with friends from across the state. The celebration was held at the ranch house they had expanded and improved over the decades, still standing strong, still filled with love. Thomas stood to make a toast. His own children gathered around him. "My parents taught us that love is not just a feeling but a choice you make every day. They showed us how to build something that lasts, how to weather storms together, how to support each other's dreams. They came together as strangers and became partners, then lovers, then the best example of marriage any of us could hope for." Sarah added her own toast, her medical knowledge making her acutely aware of the precious gift of long life together. Not everyone gets 50 years with their person. "My parents have shown us how to make every year count, how to grow together instead of apart, how to keep choosing each other every single day." Henry, the lawyer with the way with words, brought the crowd to tears with his speech. "My mother came to Austin seeking a room to rent, desperate and alone. My father offered her a place in his life instead. That one act of generosity, of faith in a stranger, created all of this. Every person in this room exists because they took a chance on each other. That is a legacy worth celebrating." Zach stood, helping Eleanor to her feet beside him. "I am not good with words like my son," he said, his voice still strong despite his years. "But I want to say this. Eleanor, you have been my partner, my love, my best friend for 50 years. You made me a better man. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose. I would do it all again, every moment, if it meant spending this life with you." Eleanor squeezed his hand, her own eyes bright with tears. "And I would say yes again every time. You gave me everything, Zach. You saw me when I was invisible, valued me when I felt worthless, loved me when I did not think I was lovable. You built a home for me, not just this house but in your heart. That is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me." They kissed while their family cheered, and if the kiss was gentle and brief, it was no less full of love than the passionate embraces of their youth. Love changed over time, evolved and deepened, becoming something richer and more complex. The party continued late into the night, with music and dancing and stories told and retold. Eleanor watched it all with satisfaction, seeing the threads of her life woven into this beautiful tapestry. Every struggle had been worth it. Every sacrifice had paid off. Every choice had led her here, to this moment, surrounded by love. As an old woman, Eleanor often thought back to that desperate girl who had stepped off the stagecoach in Austin with nothing but hope. If she could go back and tell that girl what was coming, All the joy and love and family she would find, would that girl believe it? Probably not. It would have seemed too good to be true, too much like a fairy tale. But it had been real, every moment of it, built on hard work and honest partnership and two people choosing each other every single day. Zach's health began to decline in his 78th year. He had always been so strong, so vital, that seeing him weaken was difficult for everyone. But he faced it with the same steady courage he had brought to everything in life, determined not to be a burden, grateful for every day he had. Eleanor cared for him tirelessly, and their children helped, especially Sarah with her medical knowledge. They kept him comfortable, kept him home where he wanted to be, surrounded by family and love. On a warm spring evening with Eleanor beside him in their bed and his children gathered close, Zachary Colton slipped away peacefully. His last words were to Eleanor, a whispered "Thank you for saying yes." Eleanor mourned him deeply but not desperately. They had had 53 years together, a lifetime of love and partnership. She had no regrets, no wishes for things unsaid or undone. They had lived fully, loved completely, and built something that would endure beyond them both. She continued on for several more years, living at the ranch with Thomas and his family, watching her grandchildren grow and begin families of their own. She told stories about Zach, keeping his memory alive, making sure the younger generations knew the man who had started it all. Eleanor passed away peacefully in her sleep at 79, and when they buried her beside Zach in the family cemetery on the ranch, all agreed it was a life well lived. She had come to Austin seeking survival, and had found instead a legacy of love that would ripple forward through generations. The ranch continued to prosper under Thomas's management, and eventually his sons. Sarah's medical practice grew, and she trained other women doctors, opening doors for future generations. Henry became a respected judge, known for his fairness and integrity. Each of them credited their parents' example, the model of partnership and love Zach and Eleanor had provided. And on the mantel of the main house, pride of place, sat that simple gold wedding band Eleanor had worn for over 50 years, alongside Zach's matching one. Beneath them was a small plaque that read, "She came to rent a room. He offered her a place in his life instead." Together they built a legacy of love. It was, in the end, a simple story. Two people who met at the right moment, who chose each other when they could have walked away, who built something beautiful from nothing but faith and effort and daily acts of love. No great drama, no sweeping adventures, just two lives intertwined, supporting and enriching each other, creating a family and a future. But simple did not mean insignificant. The love between Eleanor and Zachary Colton touched everyone who knew them, inspired their children and grandchildren, and lived on long after they were gone. It proved that sometimes the greatest romances are not the ones that burn bright and fast, but the ones that glow steady and warm, lasting a lifetime and beyond. And in the end, that was everything.